Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. This is a special live episode on our channel that airs every Sunday. We really hope for your support by watching, liking, and sharing. At 7 a.m. on Tuesday, March 20th, 1945, in Zhangyuan Alley on Xinzhai Road in Shanghai, China, the usual rhythm of daily life was slowly awakening each household. Wooden doors creaked open and shut continuously, carrying the simple breath of urban life. At house number 85 at the end of the alley was a fortune-telling shop owned by Wang Shiyang. He made his living as a fortune teller, but he wasn't the property owner, just a tenant. He only used the first floor for business, while the upstairs space was sublet to others. That morning, when the couple had just woken up and were preparing for their personal hygiene routine, they suddenly discovered a red liquid stain on the stair railing. Looking up, both were shocked to realize the liquid was dripping down from the second floor. Thinking it was just dirty water, they casually tore off a piece of paper to test it, but immediately froze when they saw it was blood. In that instant, both were paralyzed with terror. Mr. Wang stood stunned for several seconds, then frantically rushed upstairs, continuously pounding on the door. 5 minutes later, the second floor door creaked slightly and slowly opened. As soon as Mr. Wang stepped inside, a bone-chilling cold ran down his spine. Before his eyes was a horrifying scene. Blood splattered across the floor and sprayed onto the walls. In the middle of that dark room sat a woman named Zhanzhou Shi, her hands covered in blood, eyes vacant, face expressionless, seemingly completely lost in her own delirium, showing no resistance or attempt to hide anything. An ominous feeling suddenly arose in Mr. Wang's heart. His gaze stopped at a dark wooden chest lying carelessly in the corner of the room, its surface still bearing bloodstains that hadn't yet dried. He tremblingly approached and bent down to open the lid. Immediately, Zhou Shi's face changed color as she lunged forward to stop him, but it was too late. When the chest lid popped open, a blood-soaked human head appeared right before his eyes. Mr. Wang was stunned, his entire body swaying, his legs seemingly unable to support him. Meanwhile, Zhou Shi stood right beside him, slowly speaking in a hoarse voice, coldly admitting that she had killed her husband, Zhan Yunying. Yunying was 30 years old at the time, from Anhui Province, standing 6 feet 1 inch tall and weighing 220 pounds. He was a man with a robust build, hard-working, who had previously worked at a nearby pawn shop and later opened his own popular store selling used clothes and other items. He had a crude, gruff, and hot-tempered personality. As for his wife, Zhou Shi, she was 29 that year, originally from Danyang, Jiangsu Province. She was originally surnamed Du and was an orphan who was later adopted by the Zhou family as a servant, thus changing her surname to Zhou with the full name Zhou Xunlan. The Zhou family treated her very kindly, never looking down on her or mistreating her, and even arranged a marriage for her. The marriage between Zhou Shi and Yunying was arranged by the Zhou family. At the time, Yunying found her beautiful in appearance, quiet in temperament, and of similar age, so he happily agreed. For Zhou Shi, being merely a servant, she had no right to refuse and was forced to accept. Thus, she entered that marriage and changed her surname to her husband's, becoming Zhanzhou Shi. She was only 21 years old then. In outsiders' eyes, while the couple's marriage couldn't be called deeply loving, it certainly didn't warrant murder. About an hour before the incident was discovered, at 6 in the morning, Mr. Wang, in a half-awake state, suddenly heard strange noises and several screams from upstairs. Thinking there might be a fire, he reflexively went up the stairs and called out from outside the door. Zhou Shi didn't open the door, only vaguely responded through the wooden barrier that Yunying was talking in his sleep. Mr. Wang found this somewhat strange, but being reluctant to interfere, he went back downstairs to continue sleeping, never expecting to witness the horrifying scene just 1 hour later. When the truth was revealed, Mr. Wang frantically told his wife to carefully watch Zhou Shi, then hurriedly ran straight to the nearby police station. He was so tense because he feared being implicated. In Shanghai at that time, residential areas operated under a system of mutual guarantee and supervision to control illegal behavior. If someone was discovered committing a crime, it had to be reported immediately. Otherwise, related people in the area could also face prosecution. After receiving the report, police quickly arrived at the scene, sealed off both ends of Jiangyuan Alley, and began their investigation. The room where the John couple lived was dark and filled with an eerie atmosphere. On the bed, on the floor, even in the spittoon, everything was covered with bloodstains, clearly evidence of this horrific crime. Yunying's body had been dismembered into 16 pieces and placed in a large chest. The victim's throat, both arms, fingers, and abdomen all showed multiple knife wounds. When Zhou Xu was escorted downstairs, she was wearing only thin clothing. With a trembling voice almost pleading, she said to the police, "Please, sir, help me." Initially, police thought she was begging for mercy for her crime, but when they saw her trembling appearance, they understood. The police gave her a coat to wear. On the way to the station, crowds of nearby residents flocked to watch. One of the residents, who was a minor at the time, when interviewed decades later, still clearly remembered that scene. With intense curiosity, the boy had struggled through the crowd to get to the front of the commotion, but was shocked to see the chest containing the body. That sight caused a great shock to his young soul, making him exclaim, "How could Zhou Shi be so cruel to treat her own husband so viciously?" At the police station, Zhou Shi appeared calm and straightforwardly admitted to killing her husband. When asked about the reason, she said, "My husband treated me too violently and cruelly. I hated him, so I had to kill him." Zhou Shi also insisted that the entire crime was committed by her alone, with no one else involved. However, police didn't believe her because the victim had a large build while Zhou Shi was small, standing 4 feet 11 inches tall and weighing only 88 pounds. The huge physical disparity made committing the crime much more difficult. With this in mind, an idea occurred to the police. They suspected Zhou Shi might have a lover who helped her carry out the crime. In another development, the crime scene had been surrounded by reporters who had heard the news, with crowds so thick that not even water could pass through. Although the house had been sealed off, they still found ways to extract information from neighbors, investigating every detail of the case. Their suspicions coincided with the police, also leaning toward the theory that she and a lover had committed the crime together. To attract attention, they exaggerated Zhou Shi's improper behavior in their articles, criticizing her for being unfaithful and portraying her as an evil woman. To increase drama, they even fabricated that Wang, the person who reported the crime, was blind and had discovered the blood because it had dripped directly onto his face. For a time, the case became a hot topic of heated discussion among Shanghai public opinion. After reading the newspapers, everyone competed to criticize Zhou Shi's character. Rumors spread from unknown sources that Zhou Shi would be paraded publicly for humiliation, and even the parade route was drawn up in a seemingly credible manner. This rumor spread widely, causing traffic jams on related streets in the city. Crowds gathered densely, many craning their necks waiting to see Zhou Shi's appearance. Only when police issued corrections did the rumors subside. But was the truth entirely as reported by the media and police of that time? From today's perspective, we can easily identify many unreasonable details in the case. However, in a society where information was still restricted, Zhou Shi, no matter how much she wanted to say, had no opportunity to defend herself. In the early years after marriage, her husband Yun Ying had not yet revealed his true nature. At that time, he appeared to be a man who knew how to care for his work, behaved somewhat calmly, and spoke with a gentle manner. This seemingly simple care made Zhou Shi, a woman who had been orphaned since childhood and lived in loneliness and lack of affection, feel family warmth and a sense of security she had always craved for the first time. However, after just some time, under the influence of bad friends, Yun Ying fell into gambling. Nights away from home became frequent, and at the same time, his second-hand goods store lost money and went bankrupt. From then on, his temperament became increasingly violent and abusive. He tightly controlled all household income while indulging in debauchery outside. In a month, the number of times Yun Ying brought money home could probably be counted on one hand. For him, beating his wife had become a daily habit, even in public places without any restraint. What angered Zhou Shi most was her husband's dissolute lifestyle. Yun Ying even had an affair with a maid, getting her pregnant. When discovered and thrown out by the landlord, the maid came to Yun Ying for help. But instead of taking responsibility, he brazenly forced Zhou Shi to handle all the consequences for him. Reluctantly, Zhou Shi took the maid to the hospital and stayed by her side to care for her during childbirth. Afterward, she devoted herself to finding the maid a good new family, temporarily soothing this incident. She had cried and pleaded, but her husband remained indifferent. Bound by traditional concepts, Zhou Shi neither dared nor ever thought about divorce. To maintain their livelihood, she could only earn money herself. She tried looking for work outside, even accepting neighbors' introductions to work at a nearby tobacco factory. Every day she went out to work early and returned home when it was completely dark. Although life was hard, at least she could eat enough. However, in that era, the traditional concept that men handle outside affairs while women handled domestic matters was still deeply rooted. Women working outside were often seen as a symbol of poverty. So when Yun Ying learned about this, he felt very humiliated and flew into a rage at her. In his anger, he maliciously speculated that his wife had a lover. This thought made him resolutely forbid Zhou Shi from going outside, using every means to prevent his wife from working. Meanwhile, Yun Ying still tightly controlled all household income. Once, while drunk, he beat Zhou Shi so cruelly that she had to lie bedridden for many days, unable to get out of bed by herself. Helplessly, Zhou Shi was forced to quit her job, then gradually took valuable items from the house to sell or pawn to maintain expenses. When there were few belongings left, she wandered everywhere, knocking on friends' and neighbors' doors to borrow money. But after borrowing too much, soon no one was willing to help. Finally, her only means of survival was running up debts. From second-hand stores to steamed bun shops to breakfast food stalls, everywhere bore the mark of her name in debt ledgers. Those ledger pages became evidence of a life pushed to the brink. The continuous domestic violence and mental pressure caused Zhou Shi's psychological state to deteriorate daily. Many times, she had thought about ending her own life. On a day in October 1944, after being refused a loan at a second-hand store, she desperately stole a bottle of disinfectant, took it home, and drank it all. Fortunately, an observant neighbor noticed unusual signs and immediately took her to the hospital. This timely action saved Zhou Shi's life. Seeing Zhou Shi pushed to the brink, neighbors around the alley couldn't help but feel sorry for her. They pooled money together, hoping she could open a small shop to support herself. However, that well-intentioned money ultimately fell into Yun Ying's hands. When escape routes were blocked, Zhou Shi was forced to find a new path herself. She had thought about setting up a stationery stand in front of Jiangyuan Elementary School. Then she looked at the head of the alley, where many small stalls crowded together, and suddenly remembered that she was skilled with her hands, especially good at making potato chip pork chops. After many restless nights, she decided to open a stall selling this dish. This idea made her heart bloom with rare optimism. She happily took her precious reddish-gray pork chops to pawn, using the small amount of money to buy a kitchen knife, preparing to chop pork chops later. At dawn on March 20th, around 3 o'clock, Yun Ying returned home after a night of heavy drinking. Seeing her husband seem to be in a relatively good mood, Zhou Shi gathered all her courage and tried to express her intention to open a food stall. Unexpectedly, after hearing this, Yun Ying just laughed contemptuously. He thought it was nonsense, cursing viciously while loudly threatening that even if Zhou Shi really earned money, he would gamble it all away and waste every penny. In that moment, all doors to survival seemed to slam shut before her eyes. All fragile hopes suddenly turned to despair. The resentment that had been suppressed in Zhou Shi's heart for so long erupted violently, beyond any restraint. And then, in the chaos, she heard a voice in her head urging, kill him, and you'll be free." For 3 straight hours, Zhou Shi was torn between reason and dark obsession. But at 6 in the morning, when Yun Ying was sleeping soundly in his drunken stupor, She could no longer struggle. Her trembling hands gripped the newly bought kitchen knife, and in a moment of explosion, she killed her husband. When she calmed down, Josha realized in shock her husband was dead. But the horror was quickly replaced by fear of having to cover it up. Not knowing how to dispose of the body, she remembered plot details from plays she had seen and decided to dismember it. She cut her husband's body into 16 pieces, stuffing them gradually into the wooden chest. That chest had originally been used to store the couple's clothes, but had long been empty because Yun Ying's gambling had led him to sell or pawn all their belongings. Now it became a container for tragedy. Josha thought she had hidden everything, not realizing that blood from the corpse seeped through cracks, gradually soaking through the wooden floor and dripping down to the floor below, and this is what exposed the entire crime. Although during interrogations Josha had recounted in detail the tragedies she had experienced, she still didn't receive trust from the police. Therefore, in another interrogation session, Josha changed her testimony, admitting that someone had helped her commit the crime. That person was her neighbor, named Xia Xianhui. According to Josha, Xia often helped her in daily life. Seeing her pitiful situation, he had repeatedly provided financial support. Gradually, their relationship became intimate, even exceeding normal boundaries between neighbors. Josha vaguely said that perhaps to repay his kindness, she and Xia had repeatedly engaged in improper relations. Police immediately launched an investigation. They discovered that on the very day after the crime occurred, Xia had left Shanghai for another place, making him a suspect. After a search process, police brought Xia in for questioning. Here, Xia admitted to having improper relations with Josha but firmly denied participating in murder. He straightforwardly said he had never had real feelings for Josha. Everything was just casual interaction under temporary circumstances. Before police could investigate clearly, Josha changed her testimony again, naming another person called He Baoyu, who was Yun Ying's friend. Josha testified that 2 days before the crime occurred, she had discussed the murder plan with He Baoyu and had prepared many things for this. On the day the murder happened, taking advantage of when her husband was sleeping drunkenly, she had personally opened the room door for He Baoyu and given him a vegetable knife, then watched He Baoyu kill her husband. After her husband died, to vent her anger, she even struck one more blow to her husband's forehead. This testimony greatly confused the police, so they immediately sought out He Baoyu for questioning. But before the investigators, He Baoyu trembled, stammered, and couldn't provide reasonable explanations. He persistently denied any connection to the murder case. The situation thus took another turn. Shortly after, Josha continued to change her testimony. She insisted that both people she had previously mentioned were actually completely unrelated. According to Josha, naming Xia was just the result of long days of police interrogation and coercion to the point where her mind was confused, and in a moment of lost control, she had blurted it out. As for blaming He Baoyu, this stemmed from personal hatred, because in her eyes, he was the one who had repeatedly encouraged her husband to plunge into gambling. After thorough investigation, police confirmed that both Xia and He Baoyu had alibis at the time of the murder. Therefore, all suspicions related to them were officially ruled out. More than a month after the shocking case occurred, in May 1945, Josha was officially brought to trial on charges of murder. Before the court, she appeared in a light gray blouse, with a thin body and gaunt face, but her clothing was still neat. Throughout the proceedings, Josha maintained a calm expression, showing no panic. She recounted in detail the entire crime process, every step and every statement clear and articulate. To each question from the judge, Josha provided clear, systematic answers. This very calmness became the basis for the trial panel to determine that after committing the crime, Josha had not fled. Her testimony in court was coherent and logical, proving she was completely conscious when she killed her husband, and therefore must bear full criminal responsibility. Finally, the court sentenced Josha to the maximum penalty, death. As for the Wang couple, who had promptly discovered and reported the crime, They were also rewarded by the authorities for their responsible spirit in assisting law enforcement agencies in solving this shocking case. The death sentence for Zhou Shi immediately created a fierce wave of public opinion, split into two opposing streams of thought. One faction firmly held to the old concept of a life for a life, viewing this as a just verdict. In their eyes, Zhou Shi was no different from a modern-day Pan Jinlian, and her execution was inevitable, even welcome. But on the opposing side, many people expressed sympathy. They saw in Zhou Shi the shadow of a victim tortured by domestic violence for many years. To them, the act of killing her husband wasn't simply a crime, but also the desperate resistance of a woman pushed to the brink with no other choice. In these people's eyes, the death sentence was too harsh, nothing less than once again taking away the fragile survival opportunity of someone who had already suffered too much injustice. Voices defending Zhou Shi gradually spread wider when many writers and intellectuals joined the debate. In newspapers, quite a few articles were published to defend her, with the most notable being written by Su Qing, a famous female writer in Shanghai at that time. In an article titled "Defense for the Husband Killer," Su Qing left these sharp words: "Only those who have suffered humiliation year after year can develop murderous intent. If 10,000 people spilling blood are called heroes, then why should just one person spilling blood be considered a criminal?" She also straightforwardly pointed out the cause of Zhou Shi's tragedy. She had tried to seek death, but couldn't. And then, in desperation, she had only the option of killing. Su Qing's article immediately caused a sensation upon publication. She became the center of public opinion while also enduring fierce attacks. Some even sarcastically suggested that Su Qing defended Zhou Shi only because she herself was similarly improper. However, despite all the slander, the female writer remained firm in her position. Not stopping at one article, Su Qing continued publishing many more pieces, aiming to explain more clearly why Zhou Shi deserved understanding rather than just a cold death sentence. The weight of Su Qing's arguments combined with waves of public sympathy created enormous pressure. Faced with this reaction, executing Zhou Shi's death sentence was no longer easy. The verdict was postponed time and again. At the same time, some humanitarian lawyers also voluntarily stepped forward, proactively offering free defense, hoping to win Zhou Shi a chance at survival, however slim. The sympathetic voices from the public planted a fragile ray of hope in Zhou Shi's heart. The woman who had originally resigned herself to waiting for death now began to change her attitude. She decided to appeal. In prison, Zhou Shi showed positive rehabilitation. When assigned to the embroidery group, thanks to her natural skill, she quickly produced embroidery pieces that were both exquisite and efficient, becoming an exemplary model for other inmates. Then, a special figure appeared, becoming a turning point in Zhou Shi's fate. This was an elderly nun from a Catholic church. Before the appellate trial, she stepped forward as a witness, asserting that Zhou Shi was pregnant and that the innocent child couldn't be implicated by the death sentence. Even if the execution proceeded, it would have to wait until after childbirth. In reality, the pregnancy was just a lie. But in the context of 1940s, medicine with its limitations, completely accurate verification was nearly impossible. Therefore, the court was forced to rely on the nun's testimony and decided to temporarily postpone Zhou Shi's execution. In August 1946, 1.5 years after the case that shocked Shanghai erupted, the Municipal High Court opened a retrial. Before the tribunal, Zhou Shi appeared in a light blue shirt, looking pitifully haggard, her deep-set eyes clearly showing traces of the dark months in prison. This time, she provided many new details in her testimony. Zhou Shi said that on that fateful morning, she had originally just intended to go outside to use the bathroom. When opening the drawer, her eyes accidentally caught sight of a still new knife. In that moment, she felt as if possessed by an invisible force, her trembling hands still making an impulsive decision. The knife had originally been bought to prepare for opening a potato chip pork chop stall, a small dream for the future, but ultimately became the weapon that took her husband's life. Zhou Xu emphasized before the court that this wasn't a premeditated or calculated act, but only the result of a moment's impulse when all the frustration and despair accumulated over many years suddenly surged up at once. Compared to the first trial, this testimony was more coherent and favorable to her, leading people to believe this was thanks to the skillful guidance of her defense lawyer. When the judge asked whether Yun Ying had made any sound during the moment of attack, Zhou Xu remained silent for a long time. Only after a period of contemplation did she gently shake her head, affirming that at that time she had completely lost consciousness and didn't even realize her own finger had been cut by the knife and was bleeding. The trial lasted for a full month, and in September the High Court declared Zhou Xu guilty, maintaining the death sentence. But Zhou Xu didn't accept this and immediately appealed. What's noteworthy is that even in the desperate circumstances of prison, she wasn't completely abandoned. From literary circles to lawyers, from the press to public opinion, many voices rose to defend her. Sometimes reporters even ventured into the prison compound, seeking information about Zhou Xu and publishing it in newspapers, keeping the image of this woman always present in the public mind. The vivid writing style of writers, combined with the sharp eloquence of lawyers, created a solid, protective net, not allowing Zhou Xu's fate to be easily swept away. And those efforts finally bore fruit. Nearly 3 years after the case occurred, the death sentence was reduced to 15 years imprisonment. Upon hearing the news, Zhou Xu burst into tears as if she had just been granted a new life. In those mixed tears, she continuously expressed gratitude to all those who had extended helping hands. That gratitude was so great that, according to her words, no language could adequately express it completely. In 1949, Zhou Xu was transferred to a Shanghai farm in Dafeng, Jiangsu province, to continue serving her sentence. During this period, she saw a small ray of hope when she had the opportunity to apply for bail pending trial to regain freedom. She wrote an earnest letter to Mr. Wang, the person who had discovered and reported the crime, urgently asking him to stand as guarantor. But that letter went unanswered after being sent. Later, Zhou Xu learned the truth. Wang didn't refuse to help because he didn't want to, but because he feared implication and didn't dare agree. Her heart grew cold once more, and she had to give up. When her prison term ended, Zhou Xu changed her name to Zhou Huichen and chose to settle in Dafeng. At that time, she was completely alone. No relatives, no friends, and no stable home. Through arrangements by authorities, she was hired at a Turkish company. It seemed life would forever be just days of silent labor, but this workplace brought her an unexpected turning point. Here, Zhou Huichen met a man 2 years younger than herself. What was special was that he knew very well her notorious past, but didn't care at all. In his eyes, Zhou Huichen wasn't just a woman who had once committed a crime, but a human being who needed love and companionship. Their feelings blossomed, simple but solid, and in 1959, the two decided to marry. In 2025, the film Jiangyuan Road Mystery Case, adapted from this very shocking case, will officially premiere, bringing this story that seemed buried by time once again into public view. Zhou Huichen, the woman who had once dismembered her despair into 16 pieces, ultimately still couldn't escape the shackles of feudal moral teachings. Her life became a mirror reflecting the tragedy and internal struggle of countless women in old society, where patriarchal thinking and traditional concepts bound them in cycles of desperation. Although many decades have passed, her story still echoes like a whisper from the past, reminding us of the true meaning of justice and compassion. It also shows that sometimes an individual's survival is not just a battle for oneself, but also a mirror reflecting an entire society gradually awakening. And no matter how sympathetic we might feel, we cannot deny one truth. Personally taking another person's life, as Zhou Huichen did, remains wrong and cannot be justified. On September 11, 2003, the full moon of the Mid-Autumn Festival illuminated family reunions, and the festive atmosphere was everywhere. Families gathered around the table, sharing stories and joy. However, outside the emergency room of a hospital in Suzhou, Jiangsu province, China, A man named Chu Xiaoqiang sat in the waiting area, his face filled with sorrow. Inside the emergency room was his beloved wife, Gu Su. Upon hearing that his daughter was in critical condition, Chu Xiaoqiang's father-in-law, Gu Rong, rushed to the hospital. He didn't have time to grieve. Instead, he immediately contacted an old friend, who was the director of a hospital in Suzhou, to assist in the emergency treatment. Unfortunately, despite the doctor's efforts over 2 hours, they were unable to save Gu Su. Before retiring, Gu Rong had been one of the leading medical experts in the region. He had spent his life saving countless patients, but now he was powerless to save his own daughter. At that moment, the pain in the father's heart was overwhelming. As for the son-in-law, Chu Xiaoqiang, his grief was unbearable. He collapsed beside his wife's body, crying bitterly, and even attempted to bang his head against the wall to take his own life. This deeply moved everyone present, as they could feel the profound love between the couple. Not only that, Chu Xiaoqiang fell to his knees, crying as he spoke to his in-laws. "You entrusted Su Su to me, but I failed to take good care of her. I'm so sorry. From now on, I will be your son, by blood." Seeing the immense grief in their son-in-law, Mr. Gu also felt deep sorrow. However, with his many years of experience in medicine and his knowledge of cardiology, he couldn't shake the suspicion that there was something unusual about his daughter's death. Gu Su had always been healthy growing up. It was only in the past 2 years that she began experiencing dizziness, chest pain, and gradually developing symptoms of cardiovascular disease. Despite frequent medical checkups, the cause of her condition remained undiagnosed. When Mr. Gu arrived at the hospital, he observed that his daughter's pupils were dilated, her entire body was blue from head to toe, her abdomen was swollen, and there was fluid at the corners of her mouth. He also learned that her cause of death was listed as respiratory failure, with her heart stopping afterward. All these signs suggested that Gu Su didn't die from heart disease, as the hospital had concluded, but rather exhibited symptoms more consistent with poisoning. Because of this, Mr. Gu quietly preserved the fluids from his daughter's body to investigate further. Around 3 a.m. on September 12th, filled with suspicion, Mr. Gu privately called Chu Xiaoqiang, who was sitting beside his wife's body, outside for a talk. He said to his son-in-law, "We are both doctors. From the time you had dinner until Su Su was brought to the hospital, it was just the two of you at home. You need to tell me exactly how Su Su died." Faced with his father-in-law's questioning, Chu Xiaoqiang became highly agitated. He raised his hand to the sky and swore, "I absolutely did nothing wrong to Gu Su." Seeing his son-in-law's firm stance, Mr. Gu didn't press further. However, to clarify the cause of his daughter's death, he proactively suggested conducting an autopsy. This decision was met with general agreement from most people, but when Chu Xiaoqiang heard this, he immediately collapsed to the ground, his eyes filled with an inexplicable fear. On the afternoon of September 13th, 2003, as forensic doctors were preparing to perform the autopsy, Chu Xiaoqiang suddenly burst in. He knelt before the doctors, desperately trying to stop them from performing the autopsy on his wife. At that moment, it took about 7 or 8 men, but they still couldn't pull him away. He even pointed directly at his father-in-law and said, "She's already dead. How can you bear to cut open your own daughter?" Some relatives present tried to reason with him, saying that the autopsy might actually be in his best interest, as it could be necessary to clarify things later. But unexpectedly, these words only made Chu Xiaoqiang even more furious. In this situation, the autopsy was delayed until 6 p.m. before it could finally proceed. The results came out quickly. On September 14, 2003, when the Gu family received the autopsy report for their daughter, ketamine is a short-acting anesthetic that is colorless, odorless, and easily dissolves in water. In medical practice, it is typically used for minor surgeries or diagnostic procedures. However, if ingested, this anesthetic can place significant stress on the heart. Particularly when it reaches a certain dosage, it can suppress respiration, leading to heart failure and ultimately death. This anesthetic is a controlled substance that cannot be purchased at regular pharmacies. Only medical professionals have access to it. Upon discovering the cause of his daughter's death, Mr. Gu immediately reported it to the police. Understanding the gravity of the situation, the police quickly realized that this case was far from simple and promptly launched an investigation. Through their investigation, the police learned that Gu Su had a cheerful personality, maintained good relationships with her colleagues, and her daily mood was stable. Her co-workers mentioned that 2 days before the Mid-Autumn Festival, Gu Su had asked Chu Xiaoqiang to bring medicine to another colleague. The couple appeared to be very affectionate. She also revealed that this year, they didn't plan to give mooncakes to Chu's parents, but instead would send them a monetary gift directly. None of these details indicated that Gu Su had any intention of committing suicide, so the police ruled out this possibility. The police then reviewed the hospital's medication records and interviewed Gu Su's primary doctor. Through this investigation, they confirmed that she had not been administered ketamine on the day of her death. This allowed the police to rule out the possibility of a hospital overdose. This left only one possibility. Gu Su had been murdered. The most likely suspect, someone with easy access to ketamine and the ability to secretly administer it in her daily life, was her husband, Chu Xiaoqiang. Given his suspicious behavior during the autopsy, the police decided to conduct a thorough investigation of Chu Xiaoqiang. Not long after, they found his signature on the hospital records for obtaining the anesthetic, as well as the discarded medicine packaging he had thrown away after poisoning his wife. After compiling the evidence, on the evening of September 23, 2003, Hukyu District Police took Chu Xiaoqiang into criminal custody. When the police arrived, Chu Xiaoqiang was under the impression that his wife's body had already been cremated, so he wasn't concerned and was at his lover's house. After 12 hours of silence in the face of overwhelming evidence, Chu Xiaoqiang finally admitted that he had poisoned Gu Su, leading to her death. Facing this harsh reality, Mr. Gu Sirong felt an overwhelming sense of pain and blamed himself, saying, "It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, my daughter wouldn't have died." But why did Chu Xiaoqiang resort to poisoning and murdering his own wife? Chu Xiaoqiang was born in 1969 in Pingjiang District, Suzhou City, China. From a young age, his family was impoverished, and daily life was extremely difficult. Growing up in such an environment made him fiercely competitive, driving him to excel in everything he did, whether in academics or any other aspect of life. In 1987, Chu Xiaoqiang was admitted to Suzhou Medical University with outstanding grades. However, his family did not support this decision, believing that the path he had chosen was too challenging and encouraging him to pursue a different direction. Despite this, Chu Xiaoqiang was resolute in his choice, as it was not only a set goal, but also a lifelong dream. The more his family opposed him, the more determined he became to prove them wrong by succeeding. During his time at university, Chu Xiaoqiang not only studied diligently, but also actively participated in school activities, earning high regard from both his teachers and peers. After graduating with honors in 1992, Chu Xiaoqiang was assigned to intern at Pingjiang District People's Hospital. At that time, this position was highly coveted, as even though he was only an intern, with perseverance and hard work, becoming a full-fledged doctor was just a matter of time. However, this seemingly admirable path did not satisfy Chu Xiaoqiang. He didn't want to spend too much time and effort just to secure a position as a senior doctor at the hospital. Instead, he decided to further his education to open up more opportunities. Chu Xiaoqiang then applied for the graduate program at his alma mater. There's no denying his academic prowess, as he passed the entrance exams for graduate school just over a year later. This achievement led him to meet the most influential person in his life, his graduate advisor, Professor Gu Sirong. At that time, Gu Sirong was the head of the thoracic surgery department at the second affiliated hospital of Suzhou Medical University, a renowned medical expert in the region, and a former standing committee member of the Suzhou People's Congress. Being accepted as his student was an incredibly fortunate opportunity for Chu Xiaoqiang. Continuing his outstanding academic performance, just as he had during his undergraduate years, Chu Xiaoqiang also served as a student council officer and was a member of the Communist Party of China. These qualities made Professor Gu highly regard this talented young man. Chu Xiaoqiang understood that gaining his professor's recognition could completely change his future. So, he often went out of his way to assist Professor Gu with small tasks, like buying groceries or exchanging gas cylinders in an effort to grow closer to him. But even Chu Xiaoqiang didn't anticipate that the professor would want to match him with his daughter. To outsiders, Gu Xirong appeared to have a successful career and a happy life. But, as the saying goes, every family has its own troubles, and there was one issue that constantly weighed on his mind, causing him to frown whenever he thought about it. As it turned out, he had two daughters, Gu Su and Gu Jing, but neither of them wanted to pursue a career in medicine. They often joked with him, saying, "Telling someone to study medicine is a curse." Mr. Gu could only shake his head and smile faintly. However, the thought of spending his entire life in the medical field without anyone to carry on his legacy after he was gone left him with a deep sense of regret. Yet, more concerning to him than this was the matter of his eldest daughter, Gu Su's, marriage prospects. After graduating from college, Gu Su worked as an accountant at a construction inspection station. She had a somewhat introverted personality and wasn't interested in makeup or fashion. As a result, even at nearly 26 years old, she had not found a suitable partner, let alone considered marriage or starting a family. As time passed, the aging father grew increasingly worried about this. The arrival of Chu Xiaoqiang brought a glimmer of hope. A talented young man like Chu Xiaoqiang, with outstanding academic achievements, excellent communication skills, and a passion for medicine, was a rare find. If he could become his son-in-law, not only would his daughter have a good husband, but Mr. Gu's career would also have a worthy successor. It seemed like a perfect solution. So, Gu Xirong inquired about Chu Xiaoqiang's romantic life. If he already had a girlfriend, Mr. Gu would have dropped the idea. However, after some hesitation, Chu Xiaoqiang shyly admitted to his professor that he didn't have a girlfriend. This prompted Mr. Gu to pursue his plan to match his daughter, Gu Su, with his promising student. To his surprise, Gu Su and Chu Xiaoqiang quickly developed feelings for each other, and it wasn't long before they began dating. By 1997, in front of friends and family, Chu Xiaoqiang and Gu Su walked down the aisle together. During the wedding, Chu Xiaoqiang promised his father-in-law that he would take good care of his daughter. Seeing the young couple, whom he had brought together, so full of happiness, Mr. Gu felt a deep sense of joy. After Chu Xiaoqiang completed his graduate studies, his father-in-law's connections helped him secure a position at Suzhou Children's Hospital. The benefits and advancement opportunities there were significantly better than at the district hospital where he had previously worked. In truth, Chu Xiaoqiang was also highly skilled in his field. The Suzhou Evening News published a report on October 8, 2003, about a successful laparoscopic surgery performed on a young boy with congenital biliary atresia at Suzhou Children's Hospital. This was the first surgery of its kind in China, and the boy undergoing the procedure was only 2 months old at the time. The lead surgeon for this operation was Chu Xiaoqiang, demonstrating his advanced medical expertise. 4 years into their marriage, Gu Su gave birth to a baby girl. To many, Chu Xiaoqiang appeared to be a man who had it all. He had married the professor's daughter, enjoyed a harmonious and happy family life, and had a promising career with a bright future ahead. However, in the eyes of Chu Xiaoqiang's parents, things were not as ideal. They believed that their son's marriage to Gu Su was a mistake. In the fall of 1997, while working at an engineering station in Heitian, Xinjiang, Chu Xiaoqiang's father unexpectedly received a letter from his son. In the letter, Chu Xiaoqiang expressed his wish for his parents to attend his wedding to Gu Su. This puzzled his father greatly, as his son's girlfriend wasn't named Gu Su. It turned out that before meeting Gu Su, Chu Xiaoqiang had been in a long-term relationship with a primary school teacher. They were deeply in love and had even discussed marriage. However, in order to gain favor with his professor and secure a quicker path to career advancement, Chu Xiaoqiang decided to break up with his girlfriend of many years. His parents met Gu Su for the first time at the wedding. They were not pleased with their new daughter-in-law, as their son's previous girlfriend was tall and beautiful, while Gu Su was quite plain and petite. Chu Xiaoqiang had always had a positive public image and was well liked by many. At Suzhou Children's Hospital, Chu Xiaoqiang was also highly regarded by many of the patients' families, who praised him for his skill and humble demeanor. Whenever Gu Su's colleagues had health issues, they would often seek out Chu Xiaoqiang for help, and he would proactively bring them medicine. As a result, everyone had a very favorable impression of him. Ding, a colleague who had worked with Gu Su for 8 years, always believed that the couple was a perfect match. The husband had a successful career and was always willing to help others. Meanwhile, Gu Su had been promoted to department head just that July. Additionally, Chu Xiaoqiang's personality was gentle, humble, and he never instigated conflicts with anyone. 2 days before the Mid-Autumn Festival, Chu Xiaoqiang brought medicine to one of Gu Su's colleagues. Just then, another colleague had returned from a business trip, bringing gifts from their hometown, so everyone gathered to enjoy them. Gu Su playfully said to her husband, "Feed me." Chu Xiaoqiang smiled and replied, "I've fed you before. You're still like a child." This interaction made everyone around them feel that they were a sweet couple. Colleagues remarked that if the company were to hold a contest for the ideal couple, they would all vote for Chu Xiaoqiang and his wife. But all of this was merely a facade that Chu Xiaoqiang maintained in front of others. In reality, Chu Xiaoqiang and Gu Su didn't share the loving relationship that everyone believed they had. In fact, it could be said that they were married in name only, without any real emotional bond. From the beginning, Chu Xiaoqiang never loved Gu Su. He married her solely for the benefits that her family could provide. He knew that his rapid career advancement was entirely due to the support of his father-in-law. Shortly after their marriage, at the end of 1997, Chu Xiaoqiang's parents' home was demolished. With nowhere else to stay, they hoped to temporarily live with their son until their new home was built. However, they ended up living in the basement of their son's new house for 10 months. Chu Xiaoqiang's mother believed that the situation wasn't her son's fault, but rather that his wife was the one who didn't agree to the arrangement. She pointed out that the house was allocated to them by Gu Su's workplace. However, Chu Xiaoqiang's parents did acknowledge that after the birth of their granddaughter, their daughter-in-law treated them better. Chu Xiaoqiang's mother thought this was because they had worked hard to take care of their granddaughter. However, Gu Su's colleagues felt that she treated her in-laws even better than she treated her own parents. Every day after work, she would travel a long distance to have dinner at her in-laws' home. She was also quite generous with them, and for the Mid-Autumn Festival, she prepared a special red envelope with 600 yuan, around $80, just for them. However, Chu Xiaoqiang's father explained that this money was mainly to cover the cost of food, as they would go out of their way to prepare dishes that their daughter-in-law liked. Meanwhile, he and his wife would eat very simply, sometimes just having leftovers. On the other hand, Chu Xiaoqiang's family always felt that Gu Su's family looked down on them because they were workers. His father recalled an example. A week after Chu Xiaoqiang's wedding, his brother also got married. They chose a slightly more upscale hotel for the wedding, and the Gu family reacted by yelling and refusing to attend. From this, it's clear that in this marriage, Chu Xiaoqiang felt like he was constantly catering to his wife and her family. Initially, he may not have minded, but over time, his resentment grew deeper. Additionally, with his competitive nature, he felt that he never received the respect he deserved from Gu Su. As a result, the relationship between the couple became increasingly strained. They were merely playing the role of a loving couple in front of others. This was also confirmed by those close to the couple. A close friend of theirs recounted that during the day, both would go to work, and in the evening, they would go to Chu Xiaoqiang's parents' house for dinner and to care for their daughter. At home, Gu Su would watch TV and text her friends, while Chu Xiaoqiang would go online or prepare for his doctoral studies. They felt like they had nothing to talk about, so their married life just drifted along in a dull, unremarkable way. Another close friend of Gu Su believed that both of them were too superficial. Even if there was conflict between them, they wouldn't talk about it, and they even waited for the other to bring up the topic of divorce first. Gu Su had once confided in this friend that if Chu Xiaoqiang ever suggested a divorce, she would definitely agree. However, Gusu's friend also mentioned that because Gusu felt inferior due to her lower educational background, while Chu Xiaoqiang was a master's degree holder, she often felt somewhat inadequate. As a result, Gusu was very indulgent toward her husband. She was also very considerate of him. For instance, when Chu Xiaoqiang started losing his hair, Gusu researched various folk remedies and specialized treatments, even asking someone to bring back products from Shanghai. Unfortunately, Chu Xiaoqiang was not moved by these gestures from Gusu. While he outwardly appeared to be a loving husband, in reality, he had long since betrayed his wife. Moreover, he was a true philanderer, not just involved with one or two women, but entangled in numerous extramarital affairs. Chu Xiaoqiang was known as a talented young man, and he was surrounded by many young, beautiful nurses who were drawn to him. In 2000, Chu Xiaoqiang became infatuated with a beautiful nurse named Jiang at the hospital and quickly developed an extramarital relationship with her. After experiencing the thrill of infidelity, he continued to engage in affairs with several other nurses and interns. These women, aside from being young, attractive, and physically appealing, provided him with something more important, a sense of respect that he craved. In truth, Gusu wasn't entirely unaware of her husband's infidelity. There was an incident where Chu Xiaoqiang brought one of his mistresses home and Gusu caught them in the act. However, Chu Xiaoqiang explained it away, saying the woman was just a patient or a pharmaceutical representative visiting to discuss medications. Whenever Chu Xiaoqiang texted his lovers, he was always very secretive. As a result, Gusu had a vague sense that something wasn't right. But perhaps out of pride, she only confided in her sister about her suspicions and never told her parents. Among the many women Chu Xiaoqiang was involved with, his closest relationships were with a doctor named Zhang Fan, who worked at a district-level hospital, and a nurse at his own hospital. Of these, the woman he cared for most was Zhang Fan, but she continuously pressured him to divorce Gusu. Deep down, however, Chu Xiaoqiang knew that divorcing Gusu was out of the question. It wasn't because he still had feelings for her, but because the Gu family would never let him off easily, and he feared the social backlash. Simply put, he didn't want to divorce because he was afraid of losing the reputation and benefits he had worked so hard to achieve. Thus, on one hand, Chu Xiaoqiang enjoyed the career benefits that his wife and her family provided, while on the other, he secretly began plotting a cruel scheme. In his mind, if Gusu were to die suddenly, after a year or two, his understanding father-in-law would surely not prevent him from remarrying. Chu Xiaoqiang started bringing anesthetic home every day after work, secretly mixing it into his wife's coffee or tea. According to his plan, by continuing to poison her in small doses, Gusu would eventually die from what appeared to be heart disease, and no one would suspect foul play. This malicious behavior continued for 2 years. However, his mistress, Zhang Fan, began to apply increasing pressure, telling him that if he didn't divorce, they would have to end their relationship. By this time, it was well known that Gusu had started developing heart problems over the past 2 years. On August 27th and September 5th, 2003, Chu Xiaoqiang administered 3 doses of the anesthetic into his wife's coffee on each occasion. To create an alibi, after preparing the coffee and instructing his wife to drink it while it was still hot, he hurried off to his shift at the hospital. After drinking the drug-laced coffee, Gusu quickly became ill. In unbearable pain, she called her husband 3 times, but he didn't return. Desperate, she was forced to call her father. When Gu Xirong frantically rushed to his daughter's house, he found that Chu Xiaoqiang had arrived before him. Chu appeared to be very concerned, sitting beside his wife but doing nothing to help. Seeing this, Mr. Gu angrily exclaimed, "You're a doctor too. Why aren't you doing anything? Just saying a few words won't ease her pain." He then quickly took his daughter to the hospital, but despite the tests, the cause of her symptoms couldn't be determined. Fortunately, Gusu managed to pull through. After these 2 tests, Chu Xiaoqiang believed the time was ripe. By now, if Gusu died from heart failure, no one would likely suspect foul play. Finally, on September 11th, While Gusu was taking a bath, he added 5 doses of ketamine to her coffee, then brought it to her, saying sweetly, "My love, after you drink your coffee and enjoy some mooncakes, let's go for a walk and admire the moon." About 10 minutes after drinking the drugged coffee, Gusu began to feel dizzy, and her heartbeat gradually slowed. Chu Xiaoqiang helped her to the bedroom and laid her down, then stood outside the room, watching as she struggled with death. In her agony, Gusu called out to her husband several times, but he coldly ignored her. According to Chu Xiaoqiang's later confession, while waiting for his wife to die, he spent over 2 minutes in the kitchen meticulously washing the coffee cup that had contained the anesthetic. After Gusu passed away, he used the same cup to make coffee for himself. This shows just how cold and calculating his mindset was. Around 9:50 p.m., more than 2 hours after Gusu first showed symptoms, and realizing that she was nearing death, Chu Xiaoqiang finally picked up the phone to call his in-laws and sister-in-law. He told them that Gusu had relapsed into her old condition and that this time it was very serious. Gu Jing, knowing that her sister had often experienced dizziness over the past 2 years, but had never faced anything this severe, wasn't overly worried at that moment. After making the calls, Chu Xiaoqiang began calling for help from the neighbors and rushed his wife to a nearby hospital for emergency treatment. At the time, Gusu's parents were 50 kilometers away, enjoying the moonlight in Xishan. Upon receiving the call from their son-in-law, they hurried to the hospital. Unfortunately, they didn't arrive in time to see their daughter one last time. Although Mr. Gu Si-rong ultimately couldn't save his daughter, his experience and knowledge ensured that the person responsible for her death paid the price. On January 2, 2004, the Suzhou Intermediate People's Court held a trial for Chu Xiaoqiang. He was found guilty of premeditated murder and sentenced to death. However, Chu Xiaoqiang was dissatisfied with the verdict and appealed. On June 22nd of the same year, the Jiangsu Provincial High People's Court issued its final ruling, upholding the original sentence. Since the case came to light, those who knew Chu Xiaoqiang were shocked when they learned the truth. They believed he must have been mentally unstable. Beyond the surprise and confusion, there was also a deep sense of fear. How could someone who appeared so perfect, like Chu Xiaoqiang, hide such a terrifying side? Dear viewers, modern life can sometimes blind people to the temptations of material wealth and status. However, allowing greed to override conscience, as Chu Xiaoqiang did, is the shortest path to moral collapse, leading to punishment by the law. When a person is willing to sacrifice everything, including love and the lives of their loved ones, just to achieve their selfish goals, they not only lose their humanity, but also plunge themselves into an inescapable abyss. That concludes today's story. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any future videos. See you in the next one. Irvine, a city in California, is a favorite among the Chinese community. Located in Orange County, southeast of Los Angeles, it's about an hour's drive away. According to 2020 data, Irvine's population is around 300,000, with Asian Pacific Islanders making up 45%. This makes it the city with the highest density of Asian Americans in the entire United States. Notable companies in Irvine include Blizzard Entertainment, the polarizing game company, Taiwan's Foxconn, and the hard drive giant Western Digital. Our story's main character today is Sun Hongli, a chief engineer at Western Digital. Sun Hongli was born on July 1, 1977, in Yantai, Shandong Province, China. As a traditional Shandong student, his diligence and effort are unquestionable. Anyone who has interacted with Sun Hongli can attest to this. His outstanding academic performance allowed him to be directly admitted to the finance department of Zhejiang University without taking the college entrance exam after graduating from high school. Moreover, just a month after enrolling at Zhejiang University, another opportunity arose. At that time, the National University of Singapore and Zhejiang University had a cooperative project intending to select 32 outstanding students from Zhejiang University for free education at the National University of Singapore. With his excellent academic record, Sun Hongli was fortunate to be selected. He successfully moved to Singapore. After graduating from the National University of Singapore, Sun Hongli pursued a master's degree in electronic engineering. Upon obtaining his master's degree, he worked at Seagate Technology, a well-known hard drive company. Impressively, Sun Hongli not only succeeded academically and professionally, but also did not delay in finding a life partner. Sun Hongli had a high school sweetheart named Chen Huaying, who was also from Yantai, Shandong. She was both his hometown friend and high school classmate. We do not know what this beautiful girl looks like, as we searched the internet but couldn't find a single photo of her. However, I guess in Sun Hongli's eyes, she must be an absolute beauty, as he loved her deeply and passionately. Despite leaving Shandong for Zhejiang and later studying abroad in Singapore, Sun Hongli never stopped loving her. During his time studying in Singapore, Sun Hongli helped Chen Huaying obtain a work visa so she could stay in Singapore. He also helped her find a job as a nurse. On February 6, 2003, Sun Hongli and Chen Huaying got married in Singapore. 4 years later, in 2007, their son David was born in Singapore. Although the family of three lived a prosperous life in Singapore, the young couple decided to pursue their American dream while they were still young. A year later, in February 2008, Sun Hongli received a high-paying job offer from Western Digital, the American hard drive giant. The family of three smoothly emigrated to the US and settled in Irvine. By 2011, Sun Hongli began seeing a Chinese dentist named Liu Xuan. Due to their shared heritage, communication was smooth, and Sun Hongli also brought his wife and son for regular dental checkups there. As their visits became frequent, the two families gradually became close. Dr. Liu Xuan and his wife, who is also a dentist, worked together in the same clinic. Knowing that Chen Huaying had nursing experience in Singapore, they invited her to work at their clinic. Sun Hongli was happy that his wife found a new job. However, after Chen Huaying started working at the clinic, Sun Hongli began to face increasing betrayals, and the relationships among everyone involved became increasingly complicated and uncontrollable. On Saturday, July 18, 2015, the weather in Irvine, California wasn't great. The temperature was 75 degrees, with winds at 9 mph, and the sky was overcast, suggesting rain. Around 1:20 p.m., the Irvine police received multiple calls reporting a stabbing near a dental clinic. 5 minutes later, at 1:25 p.m., Officer Chambaros was the first to arrive on the scene. Stepping out of his vehicle, he saw a white Mercedes SUV crashed into the entrance, with the hood completely crumpled. Not far from the car, in the bushes, lay Dr. Liu Xuan, a 54-year-old dentist, motionless on the ground. Clinic staff member Chen Huaying was attempting to administer first aid. Nearby, another clinic employee named Christo was leaning against the wall, bleeding from his leg, looking terrified at the unfolding events. The scene was crowded with witnesses, and a curious crowd had gathered around, men and women mixed. Many pointed to an Asian man standing near the Mercedes, telling the police that he was the perpetrator, 38-year-old Sun Hongli. Once the police had Sun Hongli under control, paramedics rushed in to replace Chen Huaying in performing CPR on Liu Xuan. At this point, the police noticed Liu Xuan had stopped breathing completely, with multiple visible stab wounds on his chest, though they were no longer bleeding. Officer Clark retrieved an automated external defibrillator to try and revive Liu Xuan, but after several attempts, it was clear it wasn't working. When the rescue team from the fire department arrived, 2 officers began setting up a perimeter around the area. As more police and investigators arrived, witnesses were separated and individually questioned. One witness, a 64-year-old man named Aza, said he had an appointment at the dental clinic that morning, but arrived late, close to noon, because he was busy. He met Dr. Liu Xuan at the clinic entrance, who was leading 3 staff members outside. Dr. Liu Xuan chatted with Aza, mentioning they were heading out for lunch and inviting him to return at 1 p.m. During their conversation, Dr. Liu Xuan mentioned he had been experiencing back pain recently. Aza shared that he had similar issues in the past, but had found relief using a topical medication. He promised to bring some for Dr. Liu Xuan when he returned. Dr. Liu Xuan thanked him and then left with his staff. Aza said he returned to the clinic around 12:45 p.m. Dr. Liu Xuan and his staff were still not back, so he waited in the lobby near the entrance. Shortly after, the man who stabbed Dr. Liu Xuan entered through the front door. He walked straight to the dental clinic door and saw a sign that read, "Closed for lunch, will return shortly." Aza assumed this man was also a patient of Dr. Liu Xuan. After the man left, Aza went outside to wait for Dr. Liu Xuan. Moments later, the same man returned, driving a white Mercedes SUV, moving slowly as if looking for Dr. Liu Xuan. A few minutes later, Aza saw Dr. Liu Xuan and some staff getting out of a car and walking towards the entrance. Just as Aza greeted Dr. Liu Xuan, the white Mercedes suddenly accelerated, hitting Dr. Liu Xuan and throwing him to the ground. What shocked Aza even more was that the driver got out and started beating Dr. Liu Xuan. At that moment, Aza didn't realize the attacker had a knife until another passerby wrestled with him and took the knife away, making the severity of the situation clear. Aza immediately called 911. Another witness, David Alden, 67, said he and his wife were sitting on a bench outside the church when the incident occurred. The church, Woodbridge Community Church, is across from the building housing Dr. Liu Xuan's clinic, separated by a public parking lot. Behind the church is a gathering place for the Jewish community. Since it was a Saturday, there were many elderly people around from activities at both locations, providing numerous witnesses. David recounted that he and his wife heard a loud noise, turned around, and saw a white car crashing into the building across the street. An Asian man jumped out and began attacking another man on the ground. At this point, a woman tried to intervene, seemingly to stop the attack. Concerned for her safety, David, despite his age, rushed over. He quickly reached the scene and struggled with the attacker. David said he repeatedly tried to push the man away, but he kept yelling at the woman. The surrounding people were also shouting, making it hard for David to hear the conversation. Eventually, another bystander, Gary, joined in to help. Together, they managed to pull the attacker away from the woman. At that moment, David heard someone in the crowd shout, "Knife! He has a knife!" David said he didn't see a knife, but instinctively grabbed the attacker's arm and used his body weight to pin him to the ground. The attacker then ceased resisting and started shouting, "He deceived me! He ruined me!" The police also interviewed another helpful witness, Gary Winkler, a 63-year-old pastry shop owner. Gary had just finished participating in church activities when the incident occurred. He was heading towards Building C1 next to the church when he heard the crash. As he rushed over, he saw the attacker assaulting a man on the ground while people around were screaming and calling for help in vain. Gary pulled the attacker away from the woman, only to be warned by bystanders that the attacker had a knife. That's when he noticed the Asian man holding a knife about 8 inches long. Gary managed to wrestle the knife away from the attacker, just as David pinned him to the ground. According to witness and clinic staff accounts, the story unfolded as follows. Gary handed the knife to his friend Modi, who carefully placed it on a nearby green electrical box and stood guard to ensure no one touched it. Gary shouted at the attacker, "Are you crazy? You killed him!" Soon Hongli responded, "That's exactly what I wanted to do." In an interview with Zada, a clinic employee, the police gathered more crucial information. Zada, an Iranian dental assistant at the clinic, identified the attacker as Sun Hongli and the victim on the ground as Dr. Liu Xuan, his boss. Zada had worked for Dr. Liu Xuan for 6 years, and his colleague Chen Huaying had been there for 4 years, handling paperwork and finances. During Chen Huaying's tenure, her husband, Sun Hongli, had visited the clinic many times as a patient, so everyone knew him. However, rumors later surfaced that Chen Huaying and Dr. Liu Xuan were having an affair, which led to Dr. Liu Xuan's divorce from his former wife, Dr. Junli Jia. Dr. Junli Jia specialized in cosmetic procedures. Previously, the couple worked in separate rooms, but shared clinic space in room 100. Even after their divorce, they continued to share the clinic for a long time. 2 days before the incident, Dr. Junli Jia moved out, but remained in the same building, now in room 130. About 4 months before the incident, Dr. Junli Jia confided in Zada that her husband was having an affair with a ping pong coach. 3 months later, Zada was surprised to find that the coach had become his colleague. A month before the incident, Dr. Liu Xuan introduced a woman named Christo to Zada, saying she was the new receptionist and asked Zada to show her some basic procedures. Christo mentioned she had no medical knowledge, but was a quick learner and would do her best. She also said she had known Dr. Liu Xuan for 10 years and was his ping-pong coach. The last time Zada saw Sun Hongli was about a month and a half before the incident when he came looking for Dr. Liu Xuan, who was not present that day. 3 days later, after finishing his last patient appointment, Dr. Liu Xuan announced he was closing early because he had received death threats via text message. He appeared anxious and personally checked all the doors. He refused to go home, saying the clinic felt safer. Following the threat, Dr. Liu Xuan immediately went to China and arranged for other dentists to temporarily help at the clinic. He had returned from China only 2 weeks before the incident. On the day of the incident, around noon, Dr. Liu Xuan suggested taking everyone out for lunch. There were 4 people in the clinic at the time: Zada, Dr. Liu Xuan, Chen Huaying, referred to by Zada as the boss's girlfriend number 1, and Christo, referred to as the boss's girlfriend number 2. Since they all went out together, they took one car. Chen Huaying had a black Honda, and Christo had a BMW 320i registered under Dr. Liu Xuan's name, but used by her. According to Zada and other witnesses, the story continued as follows. Dr. Liu Xuan drove to work that day in a rented Toyota Corolla. Among the 4, Zada's car, a black Nissan Rogue SUV, was the largest. So, they all rode in Zada's car to a nearby Korean barbecue restaurant. After lunch, around 1 p.m., they returned to the parking lot outside the clinic. Dr. Liu Xuan sat in the front passenger seat. Seeing 2 patients standing at the building entrance, he quickly got out and started talking to a man named Aza. As they were exchanging a few words, a white Mercedes suddenly sped towards them, hitting Dr. Liu Xuan directly. While the police were interviewing witnesses, Officer McFinn approached the suspect, Sun Hongli. At this point, Sun Hongli was sitting by the curb, head down, with a vacant look in his eyes. McFinn asked if he was injured. Without lifting his head, Sun Hongli replied, "Can you kill me? I don't want to live anymore. She deceived me and cheated on me with that man." McFinn asked, "So, you deliberately ran into him?" Sun Hongli responded, "Yes." When asked for the reason, Sun Hongli didn't answer directly, but kept repeating, "Kill me. I don't want to live. Just shoot me." Seeing that Sun Hongli was unwilling to talk further, McFinn left other officers to guard him and went to interview more witnesses at the scene. Meanwhile, another officer began questioning Chen Huaying. At this point, Chen Huaying was sitting on a red flower bed in the parking lot, wearing dark blue nurse scrubs, with blood all over her left hand, both arms, her stomach, and her pants. Facing the officer's questions, Chen Huaying immediately revealed a shocking detail. The victim, Liu Xuan, was not only her boss, but also her boyfriend, and the attacker was her husband, Sun Hongli. Despite appearing upset while recounting the events, Chen Huaying's tone was remarkably calm, showing little emotional fluctuation. As the rain began to fall, the officer continued the interrogation. Chen Huaying explained that she married Sun Hongli in 2003, and they had an 8-year-old son. She stated that she and Dr. Liu Xuan began their affair while working together in January 2014. By September, Sun Hongli discovered her infidelity, and the couple started sleeping separately. In October, they filed for divorce, and Chen Huaying moved out. Since Dr. Liu Xuan was already married, she couldn't move in with him, and instead stayed with him temporarily at a hotel in Lake Forest. After 2 weeks at the hotel, Dr. Liu Xuan took her to China. During Thanksgiving in November, Chen Huaying flew back to Irvine to spend the holiday with her son. This brief visit rekindled a sense of family between her and Sun Hongli. Chen Huaying recounted that after Thanksgiving, she returned to China to meet Liu Xuan and officially ended their relationship. On January 22nd of this year, she returned to the U.S. alone, reconciled with Sun Hongli, and resumed living with her husband and son. The family even vacationed in Hawaii together, enjoying their time. Chen Huaying noted that although she had broken up with Liu Xuan, they kept in touch via WeChat. 4 months later, in May 2015, Liu Xuan returned to the US, staying for just 3 weeks before heading back to China. During those 3 weeks, he was extremely busy. Liu Xuan invited Chen Huaying to his hotel to talk, and she agreed, rekindling their relationship. Poor Sun Hongli thought his family had been mended and his wife had returned to him, but it was all a deception. When Sun Hongli discovered his wife's renewed infidelity, he gave Chen Huaying an ultimatum: stay with him and their son, or leave for Liu Xuan. Chen Huaying chose to stay with her husband. When asked about the weapon, Chen Huaying said that Sun Hongli had bought the knife in May 2015, 2 months before the incident. At that time, Sun Hongli claimed he bought the knife for hunting, but according to Chen Huaying, he had never gone hunting in all their years together. Strangely, just a day or two after buying the knife, Sun Hongli also purchased a small safe to store it. The knife was about 10 inches long and could not be folded. Chen Huaying described that around 1 p.m. on the day of the incident, after lunch at the Korean barbecue restaurant, the group returned to the parking lot. Liu Xuan quickly walked towards the main entrance to speak with a patient. As she crossed the parking lot, a white Mercedes slowly approached from the east and stopped beside her. Chen Huaying was startled to see her husband, Sun Hongli, staring at her with a menacing look. Before she could approach to speak with him, he stepped on the gas, accelerating straight into Liu Xuan, throwing him a considerable distance. As Liu Xuan tried to get up from the bushes, Sun Hongli rushed at him with a knife in hand. Chen Huaying said she immediately ran over, standing between Liu Xuan and Sun Hongli, trying to grab Sun Hongli's right hand that held the knife but couldn't stop him. At this point, several bystanders rushed to help and eventually pulled Sun Hongli away. Seeing Liu Xuan on the ground, Chen Huaying, using her nursing skills, immediately began performing CPR. After the police took over, she ran to Sun Hongli, asking why he did this. Sun Hongli replied that it was too late and asked her to take care of their son and his parents. In another corner of the scene, Christo, a clinic employee, was sitting against a wall, clearly still in shock from the horrifying event. Medical staff and police noticed dried blood around her nose, mouth, and hands. She had no visible injuries except a knife wound on her left calf. To ensure she received timely treatment, paramedics took Christo to a nearby hospital in Irvine. At 3:55 p.m., Officer James Wood arrived at the hospital to question Christo. The doctor informed him that Christo had been crying and screaming hysterically in the ambulance, but had since calmed down. Her left leg had a stab wound, but fortunately, it didn't damage any bones, so she would be discharged soon. Christo told the police that she came to the U.S. in 1999 and became an American citizen in 2005. At that time, she worked at the Los Angeles Table Tennis Association as a coach, well-liked by many students. Also in 2005, she met and fell deeply in love with Dr. Liu Xuan at the table tennis courts. Even though she knew Liu Xuan was married, she was willing to be the other woman and secretly continued their relationship. In 2013, Christo became pregnant and flew back to her hometown in Hunan, China, to give birth. In February 2014, Christo and Liu Xuan's daughter, Kaimi, was born. During this period, Liu Xuan also spent time in China as he had opened several pediatric dental clinics there, though she heard that his business wasn't doing well and was constantly losing money. Liu Xuan was looking for sponsors and investors in China while also visiting Christo and their daughter in Hunan. Christo mentioned that she knew Liu Xuan had a new lover and was still secretly meeting with Chen Huaying. When asked if she felt angry or jealous, Christo replied no, saying she had a child with Liu Xuan and could only follow his wishes. She added that Liu Xuan referred to both her and Chen Huaying as his wives. Christo said she returned to the U.S. 3 months before the incident. As soon as she came back, Liu Xuan arranged for her to work at his dental clinic. She hoped to bring her daughter to the U.S. and had booked a flight for July 26th, just 8 days later. Unfortunately, the tragedy happened today. She recounted that when she saw Sun Hongli repeatedly attacking Liu Xuan in the parking lot, she and Chen Huaying ran to intervene. During the struggle, she was stabbed in the leg, but she believed Sun Hongli didn't intentionally target her and probably accidentally stabbed her while trying to stab Liu Xuan, who was on the ground. After the interrogation, Liu Xuan's second daughter, Lily, arrived at the hospital and took Christo home around 6 p.m. Lily drove Christo back to the scene to retrieve her BMW 320i. However, the police informed them they had a search warrant and needed to examine the car first. During their conversation, Lily mentioned she was at home near the University of California, Irvine, when she received calls from both her mother and Christo about her father being stabbed. Lily said that 8 years ago, when she was 14, she knew about her father's affair with Christo, but had no idea they had a child together. Lily shared that 2 months ago, in May 2015, her father returned home and played a recording on his iPhone. It was a voice message from Sun Hongli sent via WeChat, threatening to bring a gun to the clinic to confront Liu Xuan. The recording also captured Chen Huaying crying in the background. Lily said both she and her father were very worried about the message, but didn't report it to the police. To be cautious, Liu Xuan returned to China in May. He came back to Irvine on June 18th to attend a court hearing related to a patient's financial lawsuit. When asked if she knew that Chen Huaying was also her father's lover, Lily seemed surprised and said she didn't. She explained that Chen Huaying previously worked at her mother's clinic, Dr. Junli Jia, which was in the same clinic but in a different room. After her parents' divorce, Chen Huaying started working for her father. When asked if her father had any other enemies besides Sun Hongli, Lily mentioned that her father had expressed concerns about a man named Mr. Chang. Liu Xuan had said that Mr. Chang hated him and might harm him, but Lily was unsure of the reasons. Meanwhile, the suspect, Sun Hongli, had been taken to the police station. He began his interrogation at 5:54 p.m. Sun Hongli explained that he and his wife had been married for 12 years and had an 8-year-old son named David. The family had lived in Irvine for over 5 years. Before the incident, Chen Huaying's parents had flown in from China to help care for their grandson. Despite living in the same house, Sun Hongli said he felt awkward because everyone knew about his wife's affair. The couple had been sleeping in separate rooms for a long time. Sun Hongli recounted that he used to trust his wife, but in September of the previous year, he found a traffic ticket in their mailbox. It recorded Chen Huaying running a red light in the morning a few days earlier, with a photo from a traffic camera. Sun Hongli noticed the incident occurred near Santa Ana, which was not on Chen Huaying's usual route to work. After checking the map, he was surprised to find many hotels around that area. What was more shocking was that, through a private investigator, he discovered that his wife was meeting Liu Xuan almost daily to rent a room. Feeling deeply betrayed, Sun Hongli confronted Chen Huaying, who admitted to the affair and said she wanted to return to China with Liu Xuan, leaving Sun Hongli to calm down alone. On September 16, 2014, after Chen Huaying moved out, Sun Hongli filed for divorce. To manage daily childcare, he had to bring his parents from Shandong to help. However, things took a turn after 2 months. In November 2014, Chen Huaying flew back to the U.S. from China to spend a joyful Thanksgiving with their son. At this time, she revealed a secret. Initially, her relationship with Liu Xuan was just flirtatious without any physical involvement. But one day, Liu Xuan drugged her, making her unconscious, and took many nude photos of her, which he kept on his computer. Liu Xuan then showed her great care and concern, which led her to decide to be with him. However, while in China, Chen Huaying discovered she had cancer and that her treatment was ineffective. She believed Liu Xuan's multiple affairs had exposed her to something that caused her illness. Sun Hongli was shocked, believing that Liu Xuan had caused his wife's cancer. He urged Chen Huaying to return to their family, and she agreed. However, she was worried about her green card status, fearing that leaving Liu Xuan's clinic would result in losing her U.S. health insurance and facing significant debt. Sun Hongli reassured her that they could remarry to solve the green card issue, and that he would help her find a new job, making it unnecessary to work at Liu Xuan's clinic. In January 2015, after Chen Huaying returned to the U.S., Sun Hongli hired a lawyer to withdraw the divorce petition. Records show that on April 24, 2015, 3 months before the incident, Sun Hongli and Chen Huaying officially remarried. Facing police interrogation, Sun Hongli stated that after remarrying, he quickly realized his wife was still deceiving him. Outwardly, Chen Huaying had found a new job in Newport Beach, but she continued her secret relationship with Liu Xuan. He said that by then, Liu Xuan's clinic was struggling financially, so Chen Huaying left him to return to Sun Hongli. She not only wanted a green card, but also full custody of their son and their home in Irvine. Upon discovering his wife's ongoing secret meetings with Liu Xuan, Sun Hongli repeatedly told Chen Huaying that he wanted to kill Liu Xuan. When the police asked if he also wanted to kill Chen Huaying, Sun Hongli immediately responded, "I could never harm my wife." He said he still had feelings for her and hoped they could reconcile, but he harbored deep hatred for Liu Xuan alone. Sun Hongli recounted that this morning, Chen Huaying said she was going to work, but he was suspicious because she had just found this new job, and it seemed unlikely she would be working overtime on a Saturday so soon. So he quietly drove to Liu Xuan's clinic. In the parking lot, he saw Chen Huaying's Honda. Angrily, he stormed into the building to confront his wife, but found the clinic door closed with a note on it. Recognizing Chen Huaying's handwriting, he turned back to his car and waited in the parking lot. When he saw Liu Xuan and his wife getting out of a car together, rage and hatred consumed him. Initially, he intended to talk to them, but everything became a blur in his mind. According to Sun Hongli and other witnesses, the story continued as follows. Initially, Sun Hongli planned to confront Chen Huaying and Liu Xuan, but in his fury, he stepped on the gas and rammed into Liu Xuan, sending him flying. He then grabbed the knife he had prepared in the car and charged at Liu Xuan. At this point, we have heard the testimonies of most people involved in the case. However, there is one more person, although not present at the scene, whose testimony could help us understand the whole story better. 2 days after the incident, on July 20th, the police interviewed Dr. Junli Jia, the victim's wife, to gather more information. Dr. Junli Jia, born in 1964, was 4 years younger than her husband, Liu Xuan. She graduated from Sichuan University, a few years behind Liu Xuan, but they studied different majors. One pursued dentistry, and the other internal medicine. They married in 1988. Their first daughter, Jenice, was born in 1991, their second daughter, Lily, in 1993, and their youngest son, Jack, in 2002. Seeking better opportunities, the couple emigrated to the U.S. During their time in the U.S., Liu Xuan completed a master's degree at the University of California, San Francisco, and a doctorate in dentistry at the University of California, Los Angeles. Meanwhile, Junli Jia earned 2 doctorates in medicine and molecular biology at UCLA. In 2005, Dr. Junli Jia opened her own cosmetic and anti-aging clinic in Irvine. In 2009, she was featured in a special interview on Phoenix TV, discussing anti-aging issues on the Daily Topic program. When asked about her personal life, Dr. Junli Jia revealed that she had long known about her husband's infidelity. She knew Liu Xuan had an ongoing affair with Christo, a table tennis coach, but she didn't want to divorce him for the sake of their children's upbringing. In September 2014, she received a call from Sun Hongli, who wanted to arrange a meeting. They met at a public pool in their residential area. Sun Hongli bluntly stated that he had hired a private detective and confirmed that Dr. Junli Jia's husband, Liu Xuan, and his wife, Chen Huaying, were having an affair. He also discovered that Liu Xuan and another mistress, Christo, had a child in China who was 17 months old. After this meeting, Dr. Junli Jia said she was utterly disillusioned with Liu Xuan. She had always known Liu Xuan had affairs with many women, but had never caught him with concrete evidence, or perhaps didn't want to find it. Now, with Sun Hongli revealing everything, she felt it was time to divorce. After the meeting, Dr. Junli Jia immediately called Liu Xuan, who was in China, and informed him of her decision to divorce. Liu Xuan simply responded with, "Okay." When asked about Mr. Chang, whom Lily had mentioned as a potential threat, Dr. Junli Jia explained that Mr. Chang and Liu Xuan had a financial dispute. Mr. Chang had paid $140,000 to Liu Xuan to paint an office building, but Liu Xuan didn't keep his promise, took the money, and found various excuses to delay the work. Dr. Junli Jia said that Mr. Chang was a good man and wouldn't harm Liu Xuan. On the afternoon of July 20th, investigators went to Western Digital, where Sun Hongli worked, to question his direct manager, Mr. Chen, about Sun Hongli's behavior before the incident. Mr. Chen stated that Sun Hongli had joined the company in February 2008. Both had studied in Singapore, so they had many common topics to discuss and got along well. He described Sun Hongli as friendly and calm, who never quarreled with anyone. Sun Hongli was hardworking, dedicated to his job, and one of the best employees under his supervision. A year before the incident, in July 2014, Mr. Chen personally wrote a recommendation letter proposing Sun Hongli for a promotion. Sun Hongli was then promoted to the position of chief engineer. When asked about Sun Hongli's personal life, Mr. Chen mentioned that in September of the previous year, Sun Hongli confided that his wife was having an affair with a dentist and had left to live with him, abandoning their child. To take care of his son, Sun Hongli had to bring his parents from China to help. Sun Hongli had tears in his eyes while recounting this. Mr. Chen explained that, according to company procedures, he would have one-on-one meetings with employees every 2 weeks to review progress reports. The last time he met with Sun Hongli was 3 days before the incident, on July 15th. At that time, Sun Hongli appeared completely normal. In the work log, Mr. Chen had rated Sun Hongli's performance as excellent. Overall, Sun Hongli had a bright future, but since moving to the US, he had faced many personal challenges, ultimately leading to an irreparable mistake. 5 years after the incident, in September 2020, this sensational case among the Chinese community in the US finally went to trial. At the trial, during over 4 hours of cross-examination, Sun Hongli detailed the complex relationship between himself, his wife Chen Huaying, the victim Liu Xuan, and the table tennis coach Christo. He admitted to having threatened to kill Liu Xuan multiple times before the incident, expressing sentiments like, "he should die," and "he deserves to die." However, he defended himself by claiming that he did not intend to kill Liu Xuan when he drove to the clinic that day. He only wanted to talk to Chen Huaying and ask why she kept deceiving him. But when he saw Chen Huaying in the parking lot, he lost control of his emotions and acted impulsively. His lawyer argued that Sun Hongli was blinded by rage at that moment and should be convicted of manslaughter rather than first-degree murder. In response, the prosecution presented 160 pages of WeChat messages showing that Sun Hongli had premeditated the act for a long time. The messages revealed that Sun Hongli had repeatedly expressed his intention to kill Liu Xuan. A month before the incident, he had bought the murder weapon at a Big Five sporting goods store and stored it in a safe. On the day of the incident, patient Aza saw Sun Hongli arrive at the clinic. There was a note on the door that Sun Hongli recognized as written by his wife, Chen Huaying. After discovering this, Sun Hongli did not leave, but waited patiently for Liu Xuan to return to exact his revenge. All these factors indicated premeditated murder. Sun Hongli's lawyer argued that the WeChat messages between Sun Hongli and Chen Huaying suggested that the knife was meant to protect Chen Huaying. Sun Hongli had exposed the affair between Liu Xuan and Chen Huaying to Liu Xuan's wife. The lawyer also claimed that Liu Xuan's wife had connections with some gang members who had used nude photos of Chen Huaying to threaten her. Sun Hongli bought the knife out of fear that his wife would be retaliated against. While this seemed plausible, the jury deliberated for just 1 day before unanimously concluding that Sun Hongli was guilty of first-degree murder. The judge ultimately sentenced him to 26 years in prison. After the initial verdict, Sun Hongli appealed. On March 29, 2022, the Orange County Supreme Court rejected his appeal and upheld the original sentence. The earliest he could apply for parole would be in 2041. At that time, at the age of 64, if he exhibited good behavior, he might still be released and live a peaceful second half of his life. In this love triangle case in Irvine, no one emerged victorious. Although people often say, respect the dead, the victim, Liu Xuan, was indeed a despicable person. For his selfish interests, he hurt his wife, his 3 children, his third mistress, Christo, and their daughter, Kaimi, from the very beginning. Apart from excelling academically and flirting with women, Liu Xuan seemed to have no exceptional talents. His dental clinic received only 8 reviews on its website, 5 of which were very low, ranging from 1 to 2 stars. Patients complained that while the clinic's environment was good, Liu Xuan himself lacked skill and often encouraged unnecessary surgeries. More importantly, despite his qualifications, he could not fix patients' teeth effectively. Moreover, his heavily accented English made communication difficult. All 5 patients stated they would not return. Interestingly, of the 3 positive reviews, one was from Lily L and another from Jenny's L. These names sound familiar, right? Liu Xuan's eldest daughter is named Jenny's, and his second daughter is named Lily. The remaining 5-star review was unrelated to the clinic and was instead about Liu Xuan's death. This suggests that Liu Xuan's clinic had a poor reputation, likely contributing to its struggling business and his haste to return to China. On the other side, Chen Huaying claimed that Liu Xuan drugged her, took photos, and gradually trapped her in his love affair. She also told Sun Hongli that Liu Xuan infected her with a sexually transmitted disease, which eventually developed into cancer. However, the police had a different view of her statements. In his notes, investigator Davis specifically mentioned, "Although uncertain, we believe these diseases are fabricated." From the testimonies of various witnesses, it is clear that deep down, Sun Hongli knew that Chen Huaying was unprincipled and a habitual liar. He knew she had deceived him many times, continuing her secret affair with Liu Xuan. He understood that Chen Huaying was extremely selfish, willing to do anything immoral to obtain a green card and pay for her medical treatment. According to Liu Xuan's daughter Lily, she believed Chen Huaying was nothing more than a con artist. Yet, there was no escape for Sun Hongli, as his love for her was too deep to let go. So, what now? We don't know the status of Chen Huaying's cancer treatment or whether she obtained her green card. We can only hope that if she is still alive, she will not seek out Sun Hongli again. He has suffered enough. If he had married someone else initially, his life might have been much happier now. This may have been a straightforward case for the police, but it reflects a rare love tragedy for all of us. What do you think about this case? Share your views in the comments below. Goodbye, and see you next time. Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. This is a special live episode on our channel that airs every Sunday. We really hope for your support by watching, liking, and sharing. At 7 a.m. on Tuesday, March 20th, 1945, in Zhangyuan Alley on Xinzhai Road in Shanghai, China, the usual rhythm of daily life was slowly awakening each household. Wooden doors creaked open and shut continuously, carrying the simple breath of urban life. At house number 85 at the end of the alley was a fortune-telling shop owned by Wang Shiyang. He made his living as a fortune teller, but he wasn't the property owner, just a tenant. He only used the first floor for business, while the upstairs space was sublet to others. That morning, when the couple had just woken up and were preparing for their personal hygiene routine, they suddenly discovered a red liquid stain on the stair railing. Looking up, both were shocked to realize the liquid was dripping down from the